Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome. We're in day 2 of the Global STEM Education Conference. In fact, we're actually well into day 2 already. What a lot of fun. We'd like to welcome Dale Dougherty and Steve Davee. So we want to thank our sponsors for the conference. They've made it possible for this event to be free, and they don't ask for much except for us. This is a chance for you to indicate where you're participating from. Look to the left of the map. You're looking for the star icon. Click on it twice and then click on the map. You can also shout out in the chat, indicating where you're listening from.
It is a global STEM conference.
So South Korea, Singapore, Hawaii, South Africa, it looks like. Good, we brought you a nice international audience. Or you've brought us a nice international audience. Good.
Fantastic. Truly a global conference.
Okay, we're gonna move forward here. Please keep putting notes in the chat as to where you're participating from. And I'm going to turn the time over to the two of you.
Great. We're going to start out with Dale, actually, and then go back to the first splash page while he gives a brief overview of the Maker movement. Right. Okay, good. Welcome to everyone. I'm really glad to be here. Let me tell you where we are. We're in Queens, in New York, at the Hall of Science, New York Hall of Science, and we are really hours away from opening Maker Faire, which will be our 5th Maker Faire in New York City. And earlier this week, Mayor Bloomberg proclaimed it Maker Week in New York City. Just as there's Fashion Week, we now have a place for makers who don't dress as well, but I think they're really smart, sometimes better, and are contributing to an amazing future. So it's always a wonderful chance to kind of connect to people through Maker Faire. Yesterday we had Education Day, where we had 700 kids from the community come and get a behind-the-scenes preview of Maker Faire. And then we had a teacher meetup in the evening, which Steve participated in. And you know, if I have one thing to say about how we should do professional development, is encourage teachers to become makers and experience making. There's no better way to understand the educational value of it than to step in yourself and do something that you've never done before. Try something that you might have thought was difficult, like electronics, and just find, hey, this is kind of fun and interesting, and it relates to lots of other things I already know how to do. We saw a lot of that last night, actually. We had teachers that had never seen LEDs before. It's kind of sort of the gateway drug, if you will, towards making in some ways. It's an easy, affordable way. And we had teachers that were just enthralled with the simplest of LEDs and how to get it to light up and then make circuits.
Yeah.
It was really So I guess just some background here. I started Make Magazine in 2005. Our first Maker Faire was 2006. And just to go forward with that, I mean, this year, for instance, there are almost 100 Maker Fairs around the world. I see Gary Donahue on his last year. I saw him in the first Maker Faire in Seoul, Korea, and where he teaches at a school there and has a maker space there. And I use that just as an example, I think, of what's really amazing about the maker movement is it's almost distributing itself. It's very much a self-organized grassroots effort. My audio is much lower.
Just turn the slider up on the microphone. Above the talk button, Steve, you should see a slider. You can turn that up just a bit. It's because you guys are sitting back a little.
Okay. Thank you, Janice, for your comment. So, as I was saying, Maker Movement is really this sort of grassroots effort. Where a lot of the Maker Fairs are self-organized. A group that gets together and says, we need a Maker Faire in our place, in our town, our community, and we're going to help organize it. And in doing so, they discover all the makers that are in that community, and that's what's exciting to me, is Maker Faire is a catalyst for bringing people together who might not otherwise know they exist. So I think when we think about change in education, I've been trying to think that, how do those kind of models apply to education? We're not going to mandate making in schools and see that to be with any success. No, we want to find people that are willing to kind of take it on and move it before. So, at any rate, I guess the other perspective, one of the reasons I got involved in and really started caring about educational dimensions of this is actually just seeing the impact of making on kids' lives. And Maker Faire has every year, I say it gets younger because of the number of kids that are coming and even the age of the kids. And so I see that a lot of the change that we want to happen is going to be driven by students, by children themselves, demanding more hands-on engagement, more project-oriented work, more creative, open outcomes, not something where it's all dictated what they're going to do. And so I think it's really important to pay attention to what the kids are doing. I get a real kick out of seeing them at Maker Faire because I'm looking for them to say, hey, I want to do that, right? And I think we see a lot of teachers coming to Maker Faire looking for projects and things that they can do in the classroom. So another dimension is that I think is important to realize about the makers in education is that you could start at literally any level and with any amount of supplies, tools, and expertise. Sometimes you might hear things like, oh, 3D printing, that's really cool. I don't know if I can afford a 3D printer. Well, if that's the case, don't start with 3D printing. Start with cardboard. Start with found materials. Making is far more about engaging kids in a process than it is about exposing them to technology or particular technology or exposing them to a certain outcome that we want. Or even, I would say, a certain curriculum. Meaning, I think what we're trying to engage kids is ultimately to be self-directed in process and figure out how to have fun and enjoy doing this and realize, oh, I just learned how to do something I didn't know how to do. So I think those are really big deals. The other thing that I think we've been trying to promote in a way is the creation of maker spaces. Again, you don't have to have a maker space to make things, but I think they belong, and I think they are kind of a mashup between the old shop class and home ec class and the computer lab and the art studio and the music studio. They can be all these things, but it's almost like a new library. But it's not filled with books. It's filled with tools and materials, and people come there to do projects. So we've spent a fair amount of time in developing some guides for makerspaces. There's a free guide on makerspace.com called a Makerspace Playbook. It just attempts to answer some of the questions like, how do I do textiles? How many sewing machines would I need? And if I do 3D printing, what's it going to cost? And what kind of parts and materials and some of the ideas. But the best resource for everybody really is the community and each other and finding other people, other educators that are creating and making and learning from it. The exciting part of this is it hasn't been figured out. There is no set path and we just give it to you and you execute that. The answer really is engage yourself as a creator in putting things together. There's tremendous resources online, but they're not sequenced. They're not really put together in the way that some things are. But I think that's actually a benefit for now. We probably need more things, but you know, I encourage you to dive in a number of ways, and I'm kind of just going to hold this up. This is a new book we came out with for Maker Faire. It's by Adam Kemp, who's a teacher. It's called the Makerspace Workbench, and it goes into more detail about some of the tools and some of the projects and some of the ways that you can work there. And another book, if you just look for inspiration, this is a great book that just came out really good there. David Lang's Zero to Maker. And it's a personal story about he himself becoming a maker and really realizing that he wanted to learn these skills and that he could do that is the main point. And I think it's really important for many of you to realize that most of us may not have been told we're good at any of this, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, you know, whether you know that you could be a tinkerer. We'll post those titles on the thing. I see a question there from Janice, but you know, it's more important, I think, in this DIY learning mindset that you just try to do this and give it a shot. So I think that's a good introduction. And I see a couple of questions on here. And Steve, give me some guidance on whether we should defer on questions or whether we should interact.
It's really up to you. I'm capturing the questions.
Up in the chat.
So the moment you'd like to sort of pause and take questions, I'll have them ready.
Okay, well, let's go to Steve, and then we'll come back to, we'll certainly have plenty of time for questions.
You might answer some of the questions,
Right.
would likely make more.
So
I'm going to share
sorry to
a little bit about
interrupt you, but it's
initiatives
quite
that were
hard to
founded by
hear
Dale
you.
that have
I
been fortunate
apologize
enough
for
to be a
that.
part
Is
of
the
for
mic
years.
closer to Dale, or does he just have a more deeper voice?
Who's this?
Yeah, it's close to me now, and I got the microphone. I was out for volume.
You know, it goes down on its own.
Yeah, it's we watch whenever
Okay,
we
so
take the slider up. It puts down.
Let's take 2 seconds here for a process. Go up to Edit Preferences and go to Audio and take off the Auto Adjust.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Did you find it? It's going to be under your microphone. It's going to be under your microphone set.
We have the preferences.
So Preferences in the audio video area, under Microphone Settings, there's an Adjust Microphone Volume Automatically, and you want to uncheck that. You have to turn your mic back on now.
Okay, we're back on. How's that?
Hey, we're good.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we're good. All right, technology. That's right. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the Maker Education Initiative. Dale so passionate about education that he founded a nonprofit that's dedicated to this idea of bringing more making into all forms of education, formal and informal. And so we have a program that gets the slides here. Under this Maker Education Initiative umbrella, we have, that is too loud. It's too loud, okay, we'll take it down. Thanks. We have control over it now. Several programs have been going for the past year. The one that I'll share most about is Maker Core, which is our flagship program, and we just finished the summer of that pilot year. But under Maker Education Initiative, we also have Every Child a Maker, which is our broad category for the resources we do, the webinars we do, the professional development that we do, and the style that Dale was talking about, providing hands-on experiences for teachers so that they can kind of experience what we would hope that they would bring to kids, that joy of making. And we also just started a new project, Open Portfolios, which we'll circle back up to and talk a little bit more about in the end. And Maker AmeriCorps Vista, we have actually partnered with AmeriCorps to bring 10 placements initially, 11 actually, one's in our office in Oakland, to California, places in high need, poverty areas where we can actually bring AmeriCorps Vista volunteers to work for a year to bring and support making in these very small places like Stockton and Fresno, and other larger places like LA. So that's an extremely exciting thing. And then we also support Young Makers, which came under our umbrella recently, which is a path towards supporting kids to participate in Maker Faire and support each other throughout that process. So those are some of the programs that we have involved. I'm going to talk a little bit about the success and what's been going on with Maker Core. I'd like to have Daryl kind of describe the initial drive behind Maker Core. And, well, Briefly, one of the goals of Maker Education is to engage more kids in making. And to do that, we need more people leading that. And we need mentors, and particularly what I call near-peer mentors that are closer in age to the students themselves, so that students who identify as makers can work with kids and help them become makers. And so we came up with the idea of Maker Core as a way to work with college-age students and deploy them in communities, places like science centers or maker spaces or summer schools, and have them work with kids on projects and really provide that sort of coaching and expertise and encouragement that I feel is absolutely part of the Maker curriculum, if you will. We do this in a social setting. We don't do it alone. And it's really important, I think, that we have people there that have the attitude and the mindset that we're talking about.
Fantastic. So the very exciting thing about Maker Core is that the variety of sites that we recruited for our first year. We have public schools, we have libraries, maker spaces, universities, the Girl Scouts were large participants, of educational nonprofits, and tons of museums. So a great variety of settings and programming all came together in this program. We recruited 108 Maker Core members, they were called initially. Now that they've done for the summer, they graduated to the status of Maker Core mentors, which is very much in line with the mission. So it's kind of a way of acknowledging their passing through the program and the fact that we're not done with them. As mentors, they're continuing in many different ways. Many will be back. They'll certainly be helping us with our next class of members. So here's this kind of list of 19 states. Eventually the goal will be to have representatives in all states as this program grows. Part of the reason this program worked so well was we took time, 8 weeks in fact, to do an online series of professional development, a development camp that started in spring that was weekly, about an hour at a time, where we would actually address topics that were in line with what Dale was talking about a little bit. For example, here's the wide array of topics in conjunction with projects. The projects were kind of like a tangible thing to hang what we were talking about on. The projects were more about project areas that are extremely broad. They were really designed to invite our members to play themselves, to be and explore in ways that they hadn't before. And to facilitate that, we gave them something called a possibility box, which is, here we go, about a $300 retail box of stuff with a bunch of sponsors that allowed that to happen. Everything from the very most basic craft supplies and inexpensive materials, very expensive electronics like LEDs, e-textiles, kits, makey-makeys, squishy circuit kind of things, many things that most of our members actually didn't have on hand. Some people were curious why we put all this very basic things in there like scissors and construction paper. We found that so many of these Maker Core members were college students that didn't have even the most basic of materials around. And so they actually did respond very well to having these on hand. It lowered the barrier to their engagement. While we were doing this camp, they could actually just go into their possibility box and have everything to make something at least on hand. So on the slide right now you can see a kind of a montage of projects that were made in just a few weeks in conjunction with our training. It was really a spectacular part of the whole process, as was the questions that we had each week. So that really, rather than being a how to teach kids, it was more of an exploration together around questions about working with children, this very open-ended way of how are we going to be better in what we do for planning projects, how are we going to bring the best possible making experience to the children, how are we going to bring our own experiences into this in our own setting.
One thing I think you should emphasize is that all the training was done online with Google Hangouts, and I thought that was pretty incredible to bring all those 108 students and members together across for a regular, like an 8-week session of training.
It was remarkable, and I think what made it so engaging for our members in particular was that we relied on the members themselves to really be the stars of this process. Initially, we had plans to bring in a lot of experts and talk about things, but it was actually Dale who suggested, why don't you put more focus on the members themselves? And that turned out to be a spectacular idea, because then we had exploration of these questions together and ideas that were evolved from all members together as they joined us for each session. To take it even further, we had additional cohorts, small groups of Maker Corps members from different sites around the nation that we kind of paired by region, but not by the same places that they were working in. The idea was to cross-pollinate friendships and ideas between Maker Corps host sites. Host sites are where they served in the summer. I'm going to try to get to that slide. That was all part of the community plan to have, as you can see, some of the hangouts up front that were shared. These are screenshots of our cohorts. So they went on in conjunction with the development camp, where they met separately from this hour-long project each week. And these smaller groups would meet and discuss the questions in their projects and just kind of be social and get to know each other. For many, this was absolutely the highlight of the camp, because they made lasting and bonding friendships and got all sorts of mutual inspiration. For others, it was among the areas of greatest frustration, because not every single member was as engaged as every other, and so some cohort groups weren't the healthiest in terms of activity. So we took those members that were actively wanting to be in cohorts and put them in active cohorts. We also had informal hangouts as well. The Google Hangout format is extremely convenient for that sort of thing. So we would have kind of what we initially called office hours, and they weren't too well attended until we just kind of changed their name to Tinkering Thursday or Maker Monday, or these sort of themed hangouts that were very social. So it became a real community that was supported not just by the meetups and the cohorts, but also by a very robust and private to the members and our host site representatives Google community, where members would share their responses to the questions and the projects, and they would share their projects themselves, which just were pouring out. You can imagine 108 extremely creative people taking the possibility boxes as a starting place, and then just showing us things we never could have imagined would come out of this program. So the inspiration there was tremendous. Here's some more pictures. We know what happened in the cohorts because they would share a report about what was talked about on our community, and so others could kind of benefit from what was going on in these smaller cohorts, this very social cohort. If they didn't take a screenshot, sometimes they would draw, for example, their cohort meeting and their cohort name. Here are some of just a few pictures about what happened this summer. After the camp, we really sent them out into the world. They went off to their different sites. I should emphasize that these members were actually hired by the sites. We had an application process that set them up with a whole slew of questions to guide each host site in hiring, so that there was a common platform across the board of how these Maker Corps members were selected. And I must say that the host sites did a spectacular job of hiring. They took in people that they normally wouldn't have hired and had them work an entire summer to incredible effect. We're still just digesting all that happened this summer. It was a summer of incredible variety, of infusion of energy into these institutions like never before. We get a lot of feedback, in fact, one from here at NYSCI, that they really miss their Maker Corps members. Some of the Maker Corps members are actually hired by their sites and are continuing on. Others have moved to other host sites or other institutions. Many of our mentors now that are called have actually decided to change their careers towards making an education. They're so jazzed by this experience that they're actually focused on this now as a career opportunity, and they're really well set for it because of their experience. This was rather,
yeah. I took one thing to mention also, kind of in the similar model, was Maker Camp, which we did with Google this summer, and makercamp.com will direct you into some of what we did there. But we used Google Plus as really an opportunity to create a virtual summer camp for teens and others, and it was really a marvelous experience. A project every day, hang out with counselors, take field trips, and there's actually a lot of interesting content in there for educators, projects, live video or archive video of Maker sessions showing you how to do stuff. So a really great resource. But I think it also gets to the point that we feel, one of the great wins is making in summer. Kids, the summer camp model around applied to making is a great opportunity to give kids repeated experiences over time where they often have more time to do this, and they really can dive in and begin to develop that sense of makers. making isn't just an activity. It's not just something you do once and it matters. It's more like learning to play music or something. You have to kind of practice it. You have to get comfortable doing it. And you have to try things out to feel like, do I like this or not? So summer is a great, great time, I think, to do that. And that's one of the reasons we're doing both Maker Core and Maker Camp.
Absolutely. And I should also mention that all these training sessions for Maker Core are online at YouTube/Maker Education Initiative. So you can watch and see each of these sessions. You can find out how we were learning along the way to make an online experience engaging and interesting. We certainly didn't hit that all at once initially. We certainly grew, and we have great ideas to make it a better experience. And we get a lot of ideas for making a better experience in Maker Camp, which is spectacularly entertaining and very inspiring, certainly.
And earlier, some of the Maker Core sites were participating in Maker Camp. All overlap real well.
Absolutely. So the impact was tremendous from this camp. Not just it transformed institutions, it transformed Maker Core mentors, their mindsets, everything. But it was just so infused and enriched by this. Part of the importance of the impact was we actually did an evaluation and a metric of exactly how many engagements were recorded by site, how many children and family were served by the things that were offered by Maker Core mentors throughout the summer. And we just got back some rough evaluation numbers, and we reached total audience of 92,385 engagements. Some of these are repeat, which is great, but it's all unique for the time engagements each day. So a rather large number. We were hoping for 20,000 or so. So that's kind of nice. Some of the feedback we got, I'm just read some of these because I don't think this is very big on people's screens, but you can see right here and read out at your own pace. Becoming a Maker Core member was the best decision in my life, for example. One that's really exciting for me is the feedback we got from our public schools. Our children have never had a bigger growth month. Our teachers have never been more excited. This was a program in Albemarle County Public Schools where they ran a summer program with this, and it actually influenced their teachers and their whole idea of bringing making to their whole entire school district.
Yeah, I spoke to them actually. And I think one of the things that I see in making that is so amazing is how it really wants to engage the whole community. I mean, different levels of education. I think in Albemarle, University of Virginia was involved. You had teachers involved. It wasn't just, hey, there's a summer school and there's a new staff. It was really mixing members of the community together, makers and other people. So I think that's a really positive element of all of this.
Absolutely, as is the involvement of libraries in particular. We had such an enthusiastic response from the libraries. Every time we'd say anything about Maker Core, libraries were all over it. They get this. They get this idea. They've been doing community service at the best level for so long. They understand this is the next thing to provide for the community, and they are perfectly suited for that. So we had fantastic library host sites that just did spectacular programming, especially for teens. A lot of teens that needed a place to go in the summer had a chance to visit one in Evanston, Chicago, where I actually watched teens line up at the door waiting to get into the makerspace when they were open, and it was a really beautiful thing to see. So these are some of the testaments. Hopefully you got a chance to read some by now, but it's just spectacular. These keep pouring in, and as we meet our Maker Core mentors for the first time here at Maker Faire, many of them on the East Coast are meeting for the first time, it feels like family. It's this growing family that will only continue to grow each year and be mutually supporting. So this is a little more about Maker Core. You can just go straight to our website, find out more. Certainly follow our Twitter and Facebook feeds, and we have a lot of information there. But we wanted to loop back to something very related to all of this, which is the portfolio idea. So this is a good time right now.
So one of the questions we get a lot is, well, how do you know kids are learning? And my answer often is simply, did you watch them? Did you observe them? Did you, see what was going on? One of the main benefits of making as a means of learning is engagement. First of all, kids are engaged. They're doing something, and you can see that. Right? They're not sitting back and you're wondering what's going on in their head. If they're not building something, then there's a problem, and you need to help them. Right? Second is relevance. Kids make what they want to make, and they're learning something that they are I think to some degree aware of what's going on. And so engagement and relevance, I think, are the two things, and to some degree those have to be observed. But I once was at a workshop and people were saying, well, does it improve standardized testing? And I go, like, wrong question. But, does standardized testing improve reading? I don't know. I don't think that anybody knows those questions, answers those questions. But the thing that I basically started coming around to with a phrase that I've used a lot is sort of making creates evidence of learning. The things that you make speak to what you've learned. Just as a musician playing a guitar, it's the song they sing that tells you, what they can do. So to some degree, performance and demonstration are forms of assessment here. And so that's really important, and I think it's completely missing in education today to understand the value of that sort of evidence-based learning that has nothing to do with testing. So I think the best way we can change education is to begin gathering that evidence. And largely that is looking at what students are doing, getting them not only to talk about what they did, but how they did it, and to reflect on the process, not just while they were doing it, perhaps even several years later, to look back and say, I started, this is my first robot, and 2 years later, look at the kind of robots I'm building, and that sense of their own progression. So I think what we need to have are open portfolio approaches to making, which apply really to all forms of education. And so we have two things in that. Partially through some of our engagements, I was able to announce on our magazine.com blog a couple weeks ago that MIT has created a maker portfolio as part of an admissions process, a supplemental form, that if you're a maker, you can talk about the projects you've done. And the admissions team and MIT is saying they want to welcome makers to MIT. And we want to see the work they're doing. We don't want to just see test scores. We want to see what kind of projects they're doing, what kind of ways did they risk doing new things and learning how to do new things. So that's, I think, it's like a bellwether, for education, that portfolios are going to start being part of an admissions process in things like science and engineering. Again, they've been there. If you go to art school or design school, you don't show up and say, look at my test scores, I'm a creative person. No, you show up with portfolio. I don't know why we don't do that in science and engineering and in other areas. And I think, my vision of a school website in the future will focus on student projects. Not what the courses are taught, but what are the students engaged in, what are they doing, what do we see? And to some degree, Maker Faire gives us a model for exhibition that students can present their work and talk about it, much like a science fair, but much broader and more inclusive. And I think learning to communicate about what you're doing is at least as important as what you're doing. So we at Maker Education Initiative are putting together an open portfolio working group to identify and promote best practices in portfolios, to perhaps look and recommend ways that technologies can enable the collection of portfolio. For me, one of the important guidelines here is that students should be able to curate their own portfolio. This isn't something that we want a school district or an educational publisher to own. I want students to be able to gather that information, collect it, and perhaps organize it for a purpose like a job or a college admission, or simply to friends in a particular community. So I think we're going to be diving into that and looking at that in the future. But I think portfolios are the future assessment tool here, and it's really important that we study it and use it.
Absolutely. And in addition to this evidence of creative work, there is abundant evidence of the social emotional benefits of making. It is making is so universal and such a pure core to hang so many things off of. Certainly it fits right into the STEM areas of subjects, but humanities, literacy, the arts, all those things. But this whole idea of identity, seeing yourself as a maker, as a contributor to society. This is something I've had the great benefit of seeing firsthand, being a teacher for nearly a decade in an environment that had making infused in all subjects. My oldest students are now going on to college, and many are starting high school that I've known since preschool. These students have grown up creating their own portfolios, doing creative work in all subjects. They are tremendous citizens. They are the kind of people we want to have running around in the future, and it's because they've had this opportunity to have making be infused in their educational process. There are schools out there that are doing this. We want to make more of that happen so that we have these citizens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I think, Steve, I think that's what we want to present today, and we'd love to, connect with people in that are asking questions and see what kind of
limited making is the
questions are out there.
in a way. How do you see it interacting with educational standards like the upcoming next-gen science standards? Oh, we lost your mic there. Like, oh, you're okay.
Yeah, we've spoken about this at the last Maker Faire, the national. Okay. Lost our mic. Is that good now? Okay. Yeah. I spoke with this with our national program director, Lisa Regala, for our last Maker Faire in the Bay Area. Standards kind of emerge very naturally from making. You don't have to force standards upon them. Everything that's created, everything that you make, actually, the standards come naturally from. So you can kind of see it in that way. It's just a natural integration. You want to say more about standards?
Well, what I understand about the next generation standards is they are a lot more of the assessment is based on demonstration than just simply scoring and testing. So I don't think that anybody's figured that out completely, but this is certainly the kinds of remarks I get from people is making is well aligned for these standards. And again, what I would like to distinguish, because I think it's really important that we get this right, is I don't think for many kids, I don't think we should have many standards around content. I don't think education at this age is about what you know. I think it is more about more experiential and the sense of building competency and capabilities. And how are we going to measure that? Do the next generation standards, are they really the way to do that? I think, again, this is what teachers do really well. And I think I want to make sure that teachers have a big role in helping evaluate and encourage and coach the development of kids. I think those kids will do well on any standardized tests that you give them, but it doesn't mean that the standardized tests are really measuring the things that are meaningful, I think, in terms of developing creative, capable, technically competent students.
Yeah. And there's abundant evidence that shows that it's the attitude towards learning that is so much more important than exactly what it is that you know. You can have students that are motivated to become self-learners, or that are so enthused about a subject, even if they don't know the entire theory, they'll find out for themselves.
And I think one of the big deals about making is that it tends to integrate subjects. It isn't just science. It shouldn't be seen that way. We can look at it for so many different perspectives, and there aren't many opportunities in school to work across disciplines. And this applies at certainly the higher levels as well as the lower levels of education. So integration, I think, is a big deal, and is one of the sort of opportunities there.
And I also say collaboration. One of the problems with grading in particular is that it focuses on individual students, where some of the best possible work comes from an entire team working together collaboratively. So that's something that portfolios can do. That's something that alternative assessment and teachers actually knowing what students are up to can assess. So, yeah. All right, next question. We have all the ingredients are commonly available, and I'm not sure that we've actually put all the ingredients as a list for the materials.
We can look into doing that.
Yeah, we can look into doing that.
If there's demand, we could probably put it together. There's people want to put it together.
It's the single most popular aspect of the camp. We had metrics to every section of it, and it included the, like I said, the making it complete the circuit.
I would say that the possibility box focused on training for the mentors. It wasn't necessarily what they use directly in the class. So you would scale it differently if that was to be used for kids.
Yeah, it was meant to be as open-ended as possible. Every project was presented as a project genre or area rather than a prescriptive thing to make or do. And so the box kind of invited this exploration, this play, which I think is the most important aspect of what we got out of our mentors, was this idea that we had a box of things to play with. I feel the best thing we can possibly do for anybody is to provide them with a box full of stuff and challenge what can these materials do.
You know, actually, that's a wonderful idea, too, is just the almost scavenger hunt quality of that. Call anything a possibility box and see what you can find.
Yeah.
You know, some of the things, that it's obvious it's in some of our things, but one of the introductory exercises that is so much fun for kids is take aparts. Just find a variety of things, stay away from computer monitors, but you know, kids are really fascinated to take things apart, understand how that means. It really is an invitation to understand how something is put together and the complexity that's sort of, in a sense, behind the screen, behind, you know, what's inside the device that's very different than what you see on the outside.
Absolutely, and we can start with old printers in particular. I would stay away from laser printers, but all of the old inkjet printers in particular have the most wonderful mechanical elements which can be very easily.
Old telephones.
Oh yeah, the older more mechanical, the electromechanical stuff. It's just beautiful. But you can build yourself a library of parts, your own possibility box made of recycled materials, and that is kind of one of the best and most realistic places to be.
Makers are resourceful, and they know where to look in their community. Yeah. And if there's one of the things, and so I think many teachers are too, because they can't afford supplies and they know where to go for them. But you know, most these days, a lot of junkyards and their scavenger places that you can get stuff cheaper or really free that is fascinating to work with. You know, like another area is kids' toys, finding old toys that have some electronic, you know, buzzer or noise maker in there that they can often take that apart and do new things with it in an interesting way.
We like to emphasize what's available to you right now. What do you have in your classroom, and how can you use it in different ways? You know, there's a lot of craft materials that kind of are only used in very narrow projects that could be open-ended and built. You can do a lot of paper, for example. I mean, there's just so much that you can start with. You need that. Yeah. It would be expensive.
And again, places like our site, Maker.com, have projects, but also Instructables, many other. There are a lot of great resources online that, you know, with simple materials you can make things. And in some degree, that's a great process to encourage kids to participate in. What can we do with these materials? But I say that, you know, this is parents know this and others, but you know, some of the most popular things I see in Maker Faire are building cardboard flips.
We had several questions.
We had all this other stuff around. I know, and kids just call it out. They put it together, and they're as happy as can be.
Oh, it's just magic. Absolutely. All right, we could go on forever about materials in the project documents. Yeah.
You know, well, I think, you know, to be honest, you know, those resources are unlimited today. I think through what we're doing through Maker Camp and Maker Core, we're trying to pioneer a little bit of how to, and as I think this program is, trying to do some of this online to make it easier for a lot of us to get together regardless of where we are, what time of day it is. But I would have to say that increasingly you're going to find these resources in your community. There are maker spaces. I would look for them. There are directories of them online that you can begin to use. But start asking around your community. And many of them have workshops. And we're trying to promote ways that they might have teacher-oriented workshops, like a Wednesday night or something. Maker Faire is another example. You know, that most cities, I think in America, have one. Find out and go there. And I think museums, science centers are becoming increasingly places that have professional development for teachers that are interested.
That's the beauty of informal education. It gets to be this educational learning lab that can stimulate formal educational environments by showing what's possible, showing what kids are capable of. And so you can see that increasingly in the libraries and the museums, that sort of thing. So getting out, remembering to play yourself as a teacher and to get that experience and enjoy, like we saw last night at the educator meetup. So. Well, the beautiful thing about making is that it is so inclusive that it's not really, it doesn't matter about gender at all. I think that's well, actually, you probably have a lot to say about this.
Well, I think, gender is a difficult subject, I think, in many ways, because there are a lot of different views on this, but our experience has been, in contrast to things like saying, here's robotics, we see a lot more participation from girls, and that really kind of come in with their own interest and their own desire what they want to do. I think there's some natural areas in here that young girls seem to like, what we call wearables or soft circuits, related projects where there's sort of a decorative element that we're also involved with electronics. And again, it's just like in contrast, a young boy that might be more interested in music than in something else, and we can take electronics and help them build speakers, synthesizers, things like that.
I think that making is so invitational and it's interdisciplinary in nature, so you can take a particular passion and hopefully if somebody has a passion, you can connect that to so many other things with this cross-interdisciplinary approach.
Right, and so Rachel Hanger is here from Maker Faire, and I was just talking to her, and she's developed some projects that she's done in Chicago. And again, you can call me by any name, and you can be gender specific or gender neutral. But she had a dollhouse, and really, but she also had like a Halloween house. They're shoebox houses, but they're instrumented with various activities. If you touch this, the lights go on. Something happens, a ghost comes out, and so they've become little play areas that are interactive. And again, I think maybe I've come back to that word. I don't think play is gender specific. I think it's open to everyone. Now, Margaret Honey is the executive director here at our College of Science, said something to educators yesterday, and I think this is an important thing to remember. A lot of the failing in education today has to do with boys, not girls, and it is a lack of engagement in asking particular boys to sit for long periods of time, and they're not able to do stuff. So I see great potential there, and almost a sort of desperation among young boys to want to do stuff and become makers and learn that way. This is how they learn. They know they learn this way. And it's not the girls that learn this way, they certainly do. But some of the drastic failures that we're seeing in education have to do more with boys than girls.
One last comment is that 65% of our Maker Core mentors are female. So we have applicants of 330 for those 108 ultimate positions, and it was overwhelmingly female. So it's interesting.
And again, this is what some of our challenges in the making of education are. It isn't. I believe we can get everybody into making. I'm not sure that everybody will go from making into engineering, for instance, or science. And to some degree, those professions even and those educational pathways need to change more to become creative, to be receptive to students who aren't necessarily analytical thinkers but have tremendous synthetic capabilities and working in materials and products. It tends to be in education, you go down the design road if you're creative, you go down the engineering route and say you're analytical. The future is that they should be much more combined and integrated.
Experiences have been tried out in other countries. What's your international reach?
Now, this is sort of a bottom up. I mentioned Gary on here. About a third of the Maker Faires are international, a little bit more in Asia than we're seeing, say, in Europe. But our first Maker Faire alone was October 3rd, and I think it'll be a pretty large event. And we had our first Maker Faire in Germany this year in Hanover. So I think it's beginning to spread that way. I think we see the teachers and parents and others sort of engaging in it. But again, this is not centralized, so I don't have everybody registered for this. So I think it's sometimes hard to measure that.
we had last night a whole bunch of visitors. I said we had a whole bunch of visitors last night at our educator meetup from Singapore, and I was speaking with David Wells, the gentleman behind the Makerspace here at MySci, about making is a way of life for people in many, many countries. It's the day-to-day survival of fixing things and making do with what they have, recycling things. That is a whole lifestyle that folks really can.
Speaking of a centralized
because it's an everyday experience for them around their life. That's something that we can learn from all sorts of people around the world, their day-to-day habits of fixing, tinkering, using, that
more
sort of
involved
thing.
in growing and organizing the Maker Ed community with a similar effort like Apple has built with their Apple Distinguished Educator community. And, I mean, that's a corporate
Google
group.
says,
Whoops.
reminder,
Sorry,
Lucy,
my computer's
available
talking.
at
So, to be honest, I think our limitations are only funding. We have to be focused on how we spend our resources. Maker Ed is. I would love to see sort of Maker Ed, do more to organize the community. We do some things, but we would like to do. We'd like to do more. Part of this is getting things like foundations and other companies really seeing the connection to STEM and the connection to, I think, the end value of what kids become as makers in society and in culture.
For 5 days, and
if you're looking to put your money somewhere, it's a no-brainer. You can join this fine roster of sponsors and supporters.
And they loved everything that they saw and did, and I wish we were coming this weekend, but this is kind of keeping me occupied. Next year, we'll come in the spring. One last question. There it goes again. So annoying. I had something annoying on my computer. Anyway, last question. This is from Marta Collier. She said, Arkansas is trying to promote maker spaces for extended learning opportunities. It's a way to clearly bridge time into complement classroom instruction. Hire teachers who work in after-school maker spaces. So how do we make this work, I guess, with regular classroom traditional experience? I guess is what we're asking here. Yes, basically, how do we make this? How do we tie this to the regular classroom experience?
So is the question about doing it after school, and how do we make it work in school? Okay. Well, I see, Lucy, I see the question in writing there, so I kind of understand it. One of the real challenges is that what happens after school or in that extended learning time often is disconnected from the view of the child. At a summer camp this summer in Santa Rosa, which was actually, we had teachers from the school involved in the summer camp. So they knew the kids during the school year, but they got to see them differently in the summer camp. And they came up, came up to actually a principal and said, see that girl there? She was our biggest problem all year long. She is the star of the Maker Camp. She's the most engaged. She is, she did the best work. She's here every day. And so the real thing is, if you don't have teachers engaged in seeing what the kids do, say in these free-form periods, they won't see the possibilities in those kids, you know. So they'll keep demanding more of the same in the school day and not seeing that they might be doing something differently that suits them and is really developmentally important. So I think the question, you know, that we're learning, I would say for the Arkansas example, Maker Core has a project working with California After School Network, which we hope will get, you know, off the ground next year. It's tied to the Vista Core. Things of actually training and working to create maker clubs in after-school settings and to try to, I think, connect them into the school day. Again, I think there are groups out there like Science Olympiad and others that, you know, there's tentatively after-school programs, but they bridge into the classroom. The teachers know, in a sense, they do some of the curriculum in the class, but they know that the project work is going to take place after school or in other times.
I think it's incredibly important for teachers to provide a variety of expression routes for their students, so that reminding themselves that kids really have different languages. Some are very verbal, some are very all about writing, some express themselves physically or through dance or through making. But providing those opportunities in all subjects should be one of those areas that can be integrated with any classroom, giving them a chance to kind of explore and play first before kind of presenting things, have them wonder about theories. So there's a lot of mindset changes you can make that are independent of even materials.
Yeah. You know, and one of the powers that I see is particularly in the camp and in after-school clubs is you're actually giving kids a chance to restart. You know, there are a lot of kids that see themselves as failures in the traditional classroom, and take them into that new context and allow them, you know, there's almost no prerequisite needed to be successful. They just do things. And restoring their confidence as learners, I think, is one of the real important things we can do for lots of kids.
Absolutely. No matter where a child is on a traditional ability scale or anything like that, you put them in a room together making stuff,
so we want to make sure that we wrap
all
this up
various
on
drop
time.
down. You won't know who the star students are, who are to get the best grades, or who's on an IEP, all those sort of things. These barriers just melt away with
making. You've elaborated on a lot of this, but if there's any final words you want to give us on how we can help you spread the word, I think that would be a great way to end today. And we wish you good luck this weekend, and I'm sure it's going to be a glorious event. And if anybody's in the New York area, you must go. So give us a few final thoughts.
Well, I think, you know, I think a lot of the models we're working with, like Maker Core and Maker Camp, are extensible to things like teacher development and things, and if we can sort of help get, I think, you know, a number of groups together that value this, you know, it doesn't have to be done from a centralized point of view. It can be done by lots of people getting together like this. There are other resources. Just seeing in the list in the chat, Gary put out some things. There's really a lot of things that can help people get started. I think you asked a question about community. I think that, you know, if we could figure out a really good way to build that sort of ongoing teacher community, that would be a real important step for all of us. And to some degree, that needs to be organized, I think, sometimes at a district level and a, you know, county level and the state level and the national level. There are different layers there, so it's a challenge. But thank you to all of Lucy, to Steve, and everyone for organizing this. It was delightful for us to participate. I'm Dale at dale@makermedia.com. Love to hear from you. And I'm at DalePD on Twitter if you want to follow my adventures in this. But you know, I think what we're doing, this group and what many of you in education are doing, is really important. I think this has great power to be transformative for education, really from a grassroots perspective. Leanne, that's my contact again. Maybe Lucy, you could type it in the chat room. Yeah. My email contact, and we'll sign off from there. But thanks again, everybody.
Thank you all, and the fact that you're all here is incredibly encouraging to me. So thank you for your enthusiasm and your questions.
Dale at Maker
And the
Media.
recording will be
bet.
available
And I'll put
immediately
my
after
contact
this. If you
information
want to
in the
share it with
chat
your
channel
colleagues
too there
who
as well.
couldn't make it today. And we will have another keynote starting right after this. Actually, we have back-to-back keynotes today.
Both Maker Media.
Yeah, that's right.
Maker Media.
If you want to join us for that. Thanks again, guys. We appreciate it. Have a fabulous weekend. Can't wait to hear all about it. Bye.